What's up, YouTube? I'm Robert. This is the Biker Channel, B1. Today, you're here on the 13th episode of the BiKER Bar, which is every Sunday at 5 p.m. PST, unless we come up with some reason to change the time that particular weekend. So it happens. Nonetheless, what I wanted to do first was tell everybody out there, I really appreciate you guys all tuning into the show every week. And those of you that aren't tuning in every week for the live version and are checking it out on Apple's podcast app or Google Play or over there on SoundCloud, not card. Apparently I haven't had enough drink today because I still can't speak. So if you guys are stopping by one of those spots, definitely give the podcast a review, maybe hopefully as best of a rating as you can. Otherwise, I'll hunt you down. And so nonetheless, here we are. It is, like I said, the 13th episode. And today I have Patrick from Cali Protectives. You guys know that I definitely talk about Cali's helmets a bunch. Some of you guys have been around the channel for a while, have seen the interview that I did with their owner and founder. But Patrick's one of the guys behind the curtains. Patrick, I'll let you go ahead and say hello and maybe what your position is there, and then we can figure out where we're going from there.
Hey, YouTube. Yeah, this is Pat from Cali. I'm the marketing manager at Cali, and basically if you see our logo or product anywhere, I probably have a hand in helping getting it there. So, yeah, I oversee all of Cali's basically consumer-facing efforts. So, and working with this guy here is part of that effort, unfortunately. So.
Right, you get the blessing. The first thing I'm gonna have to do to you is what's going on with that drop bar in the background there?
Drop bar? Oh, well, that's the gravel bike.
I know
yeah.
I've seen it in person, but I figured, we might as well talk about this since this is a mountain bike centric channel. I'm not saying it's only mountain biking, but yeah, that's a pretty sick ride. I remember when I've seen it before. What is it that you got back there? It's
a UK based manufacturer or brand. It's a Kinesis Tripster ATR. They're not distributed in the US, but I know the guys from the company, and what I liked about it was when I was thinking about building a gravel bike, it was one of the first bikes about a year or two ago that actually had dual wheel compatibility. So it actually can run 700C by 45 tires or get rowdy with 27 5x2 mountain bike tires, and it has a dropper post. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty.
That's actually really cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, like, I actually did a gravel ride with Red Kite Prayer 2 weekends ago, and it was over 2 days. The first day we rode in Occidental in west of Santa Rosa, and that was a longer day, 55 miles, 5,400 feet of climbing, and I rode my 700C tire and wheel setup so that I could roll faster. Then the next day was just to sort of putt through the local bike park, which was Annandale in Santa Rosa itself. And so I was able to swap out the wheels for the 2-inch tires and basically mob around on any single track I really wanted to.
How's Annandale looking? For those of you guys that aren't from this area, Annandale is in the Santa Rosa area, which was hit by wildfires pretty hard. And Annandale is probably like one of the best places to ride, like right in that local area. Also, it being in the Northern California Marin area, the actual legal trails are very few and far between. So that's definitely one of the better places that you can ride legally. So what did it look like over there?
So I actually lived in Santa Rosa back in 2008 and rode there a lot. And this was the first time I'd been back there, and the first time I'd been back there after the fires. But we actually stayed on mainly the fire roads, and that looked fine. The park was in good shape. I didn't see anything that touched by fire. You could see where ash and other embers had fallen on areas that were still fine, but saw some of the devastation. But from we didn't actually see any of the fire damage on our ride. But from what I'm told, though, they've by the locals who rode with us, that the trail crews are out there constantly working to repair as often as possible. So they're trying to open up more and more trails, and I'm not sure where it stands right now, but people were riding like all over the place. So
yeah, I mean, I would imagine, like I said, there's not a whole lot of places to ride in that area that aren't illegal anyway. So I would imagine that even if it's like 3 trails that are open, people are like, I'm going, you know.
Apparently the not so legal trails on Annandale were hit pretty hard. So we'll see what happens, though. I'm sure the trail nymphs will go to work and do pretty cool shit in no time there.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine going there on a rigid bike, but I guess if you're just sticking to the fire roads, then that wouldn't be too bad. And Annandale has some pretty good chunk and a lot of little like baby head kind of trails that are pretty fun to run.
Yeah, I was actually the most mountain biker of the group, which is kind of funny. But I mean, who brought 27.5 by 2-inch knobby tires with the dropper post?
Right.
And one guy, and he worked for Cali.
Right.
But it was rad because even on the mellow fire road that we were on, it was like riding a pontoon boat in a sense. You know, it just sort of rolled over everything, and then with endless traction when I wanted to get rowdy. So it was a little bit slower, but I did want to do some of the single track, but the group was very roady, and we didn't have people that were that adventurous. I was like, there's a simple single track up to the meadow, and they're like, no. And I was like, oh, that sucks.
You gotta beat it.
So
yeah, I know that was like North and South Burma. Burma, I think it's called, is like pretty rowdy. It's super fun to come down.
I used to ride my full-blown cross bike with 38 mil tires in Santa Lucia. Ride that bike in San Luis Obispo, and that was pretty rocky. So I was actually eager to, throw the bike around, but they're more roady than mountain biker on this ride.
Which Cali helmet do you put on whenever you decide to go ride?
So that was the last time I rode with a road bike or oriented helmet, and I rode a new helmet from ours I hadn't ridden with before. It's called the Preem. It's an entry-level road helmet, but that we introduced this year. So it's cool to try that out, and that actually might become my current favorite when I'm on the gravel bike. But my go-to
has LDL in it too.
No, this is we've been phasing in some new road stuff in the last 2 years, and this was a $60 offering. So it's just a basic EPS foam helmet, but we put the softest foam we can inside of it, and then it has just kind of a more modern, cool shape, which was kind of funny when I first saw it about a year ago in a clay. And Brad, the owner, showed me the helmet, and he's like, "What do you think of this?" And I said, "Sweet, is that going to be our like $120 helmet?" He's like, "No, it's going to be our $60 helmet." I was like, "Okay, sounds great."
Is it called Preem but spelled like prime?
So Preem is actually a racing term
from
crit racing. It's basically a bell lap. So you're, racing NASCAR style on a closed circuit, and then whether it be by time or lap count, there will be prize laps, and that's called a Preem lap. So it's spelled prime, but it's actually, I guess, a French term for Preem.
Did you guys have another helmet that looks almost exact? Because that looks like the one that I'm riding, the road one that I'm riding, except for the one I have has the LDL in it.
That's the wow, now I'm really showing my that's the Therapy.
Okay. Here, I'll put the link to the Preem up there for the people in the live stream.
Yeah.
Right
so
on.
The Therapy is definitely a step up from that. It's still an in-molded helmet, so single density EPS foam, but it's got the LDL in it, our low density layer, low G and rotational protection system. And it's basically at that $100 price point and up from Cali. You'll see us introducing that tech.
So let's go ahead and get into that, because this is the downside. The downside is that I've talked to you guys so much about your products that I'm going to make some assumptions that people know what the hell I'm talking about. And that's probably the wrong thing to do right fucking now. So let's take a step back and say, let's let people know what is the difference between LDL and what would be comparable to what most people probably have already heard of, which is MIPS.
So,
go.
Start. I know what.
And go.
It's like where to start with this. So it's probably easiest because if people are familiar with helmets, bicycle helmets, and enhanced protection, most people think of MIPS, as you talked about. So MIPS was the first company to really spend a lot of time, research, money, and marketing in saying we can make a safer helmet. And the way they addressed this was this rotational or oblique impact protection, basically trying to reduce the torque on your head and your brain. They were the first to do it. Their idea was the plastic kind of shower cap that floats between your head and the EPS shell. Sort of did its job. But as we started to look more and more into this, other people, including Cali's founder, said, how can we do this better? You know, it's a good idea, but can we do this in a better way? So we went about it by using gel padding and worked with the Imperial College of London and the Armor Gel Lab to create our low density layer technology. So it's a gel padding system. They look like octagon, or not octagon, green Lego octopus strips, and they line the inside.
I think the top of Lego is like like if the little circles on the top of Lego was hollow to look maybe more like a macaroni. That's kind of what it looks like. It's almost the same size as a macaroni, like little macaroni noodles kind of sticking towards your head.
Yeah, and everybody thinks it's going to stick to your head. But what's cool about that shape and is that it's not by chance. We actually tested out what a circle would be like. So that oblong or that oval shape to those inverted Legos is designed purposely to protect you against additional impacts. So you've got your EPS shell, which is designed for a big testing standard, the CPSC standard. That's meant to keep you alive. But we add this LDL padding system to the inside of the helmet to address the other impacts, the lower G impacts and the rotational impacts, like what MIPS address. And wow, sorry.
I think that was one of the things that Brad is, when we're referring to Brad, that he's the owner and the founder of Cali, or one of the owners and founders of Cali. And he basically had told me at the time that he really wanted to be able to create a helmet that was also really good on the kind of like we were joking calling it the small bump compliance, where it's like these helmets were really made well to like have these huge impacts on them, but they weren't necessarily made for like to protect you in that circumstance where you just kind of like fall over on the side of your bike and just being your melon a little bit. But so he said that was part of the reason as well, right?
True. So Cali is very, very tied into research. We try to make the safest helmet possible first, and then dress it up for fashion sense and styling. And one way you can look at that is actually why we decided to develop LDL. So CPSC is the testing standard for bicycle helmets, and that requires that the helmet transfer no more than 300 Gs of force to the brain. That's the force needed to crack the human skull. That was set back in the 70s. So that's a really big hit, and hopefully the helmet is there to protect you from the worst case. But through studies, they've also found that 80% of bicycle crashes occur at or below 100 Gs. And then on top of that, studies have also shown from boxing that you can get knocked out with as little as 74 Gs of linear force. So why is our helmet designed to be so hard? It's for that big impact. So we're trying to fill that gap and address a wider range of impacts by putting that soft gel material in there, because it can compress at a lower G force than the EPS shell. So it's softer stuff next to your head to cushion you against those smaller bump compliance type hits that you're more commonly going to experience.
Yeah, and then also then it still does the rotational side, which is kind of what the MIPS does as well. So that's kind of what you're carrying, like covering with it. The thing is too, is when you look at this stuff on the bottom of the helmet, like it really doesn't look like, it's not like this huge thing under there. It's just like, it's really a kind of like a small little thing. And I think when you're saying gel too, it like if I was like, even me knowing what it is, like that gives me like the wrong thought in my head. It's like almost like a hard eraser kind of like a feeling, like instead of like a gel. Like when I think gel, I think of something that's really kind of like fluidy, like almost like slime in a bag. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's,
but I mean, yes, the product is a gel. So I mean, obviously.
And as far as the size,
you know what the fuck you're talking about, man.
No, but the original point that you're getting at, we'll overlook the other part, because that's just funny. We can do that later.
Right.
But the size of the gel pad is an interesting thing, because MIPS was really good at marketing the way the shell moved and how their system worked. But in testing, we found that it takes very little movement, very little shearing or motion that occurs to counter these rotational forces. So they don't need to be bigger. Like we actually tested far larger pieces of gel within there, or within the helmet, and different shapes and everything. And we actually settled on this as the best performer for the range of impacts we were addressing. So yeah, they're very tiny, but they're next to your head as close as we can get them. And all they need to do is just be a little bit of a bumper and the ability to twist on top of your head.
So you talked to me about, and sorry, I'm going to change gears a little bit. You talked to me
Sure.
about what your helmet of choice was that you were wearing on your CX bike whenever you're riding your mountain bike back there, which we also need to talk about. What is it that you choose on that one?
That one right now, there's two helmets that I grab most often. But really the one I picked the most is the Maya. Right now it's the Maya 2.0 that was introduced this year. And that is our veteran helmet that we introduced in 2015 as one of the early adopters of this deep coverage, enduro style, additional protection helmets that was kind of the fad back then. I love it because it's compact, small, really comfortable. We got the head form right on that one. The pad set's super comfy. And then
I'll have to jump in there. I can tell you that when I first saw that helmet, Richard from Sticker had it, and he was like, dude, you got to try this helmet on. I was like, honestly, I don't really give a fuck, dude, because like I got a helmet, I like it, I like my helmet, why do I even care about your helmet? And he like just was pressing me. He's like, no, dude, seriously, this thing's like crazy comfortable, try it on. And finally I was like, just to shut the guy up, because you know the dude, he just likes to talk, right? So just to shut him up, I was like, fine, I'll put it on. I put it on, I was like, oh my god, I need to get one of these, like instantly. Like that comfortable, that helmet is really that comfortable, at least for me in my head. I mean, you must have been dropped down the stairs just as many times as me, because like my head's all kinds of lumpy, and I really like that helmet a lot. I really can't speak well enough about it.
It's been a really good shape. We got it right. And it's always challenging when designing a helmet and how you design it to set on that head form can really change the way that it fits. And we hit it right with the Maya, and it's just comfortable. And then this year we added that LDL protection, and then we changed the padding a little bit. It's still a wicking material, but we just found a better supplier, and it's got this different checkered pattern on it, and it's just comfy. You just put it on your head and it's comfortable. So it's not a big change for the model this year, but I love the helmet. And it's not too hot here in Morgan Hill and Santa Cruz. I spend most of my time riding in Santa Cruz, so coastal weather where the Maya doesn't really have a problem. I'd say on the really, really hot days, or if I'm on, I know that I'm going to be on an exposed ridge, I would go for the Interceptor, which is our top tier enduro helmet. And that one is a really deep coverage, really highly ventilated helmet, which is great for guys who either run really hot or sweat a lot and just want a lot of venting in a full.
I sweat my ass off, and I like that helmet's so comfortable to me. I don't even give a shit. It definitely doesn't have the same kind of like air ventilation if you're one of those people that is particular about that. But I mean, to me, it's a really comfortable helmet. So, and I know no matter what helmet I have, I've never had a helmet that I'm not just dripping sweat all over my glasses and everything all the time. So to me, it's just like that thing's just so comfortable. I don't even care. I don't want to try anything else.
And it's just a great helmet for what it is and the price and what it delivers.
Yeah, it's not super expensive either. What's the regular retail on that?
Yeah, it's $100.
$100. Yeah, so I mean that's totally reasonable for a helmet. I mean, it's not fucking $23 from what you're getting at Walmart, but it's not a Walmart helmet, right?
No. I mean, and it's a helmet. It's kind of like the Fox Flux in that it's a helmet that I don't see us changing a lot. We might bring out new models, but that helmet's going to stay the same. And part of the reason why we're able to keep the cost at $100 was we're using an older style dual closure, but the thing just works. That's why it's in there, like that instead of a dial or something like that. And heavy duty straps with cams, so everything stays in place. And then I gotta say the weirdest part about that helmet, but that has grown on not only us as a company, but our fans and the buying public, is the visor. It's nice and flexible, full coverage, and it's just so funny because when that helmet came out, when the Maya came out in 2015, it was labeled the duckbill platypus, or it just looked funny.
That's funny. I didn't ever really notice anything with the visor that like jumped out to me. I was like, looks like every other one I have.
Well, that was the thing, is before that, nobody had a visor really like that. And if you go back and you find the Pink Bike or, generally Pink Bike because of the comments on there,
right.
They ripped it a new one over its look. And yet year after year, everybody else has kind of come along to that same design and aesthetic. And so we're kind of sitting here pretty sort of going, okay, we're doing good now.
So I'm gonna ask you one of those tough Oprah questions because I'm seeing it come up in the chat here. So
okay.
You talked about finding a different supplier for your pads inside of the Maya there a second ago.
Yeah.
And there's a handful of people on here saying, so when are they going to get the Strike knee pads in? Because I've been trying to buy them, and what's going on with the Strikes?
Okay, so it's another one of those lovely supplier issues. So nice segue there. So basically, we buy the cap on the Strike pads. It's made out of a material called xylem, and it's
so just to clarify, when you say cap, that's actually the pad part of the actual.
Yeah, it's that honeycomb exterior piece. That's where the big tech is, and it's made by an Italian chemical company, and so it's been just a bit of a struggle to get consistent supply. So we had a really good initial batch, and we ordered conservatively and tried to place orders right away. But it's looking like our I want to say December is when I saw the last. So I'm sorry to all the fans out there that have been looking for getting a hold of these. I mean, we're air shipping them in as soon as they're available. And
so every once in a while you get a few small batches in, you're just like sending them out to your like resellers, or
yeah, it's
on the website that they sell like instantly, or
exactly like as soon as it hits the inventory, the website syncs every hour. It's there, but sometimes as soon as it's received, the minute that the warehouse guys go to process an order, it's already taken up. So I haven't even had a chance to steal any way to replace my own athletes. So that's something we're working on improving going into 2019. But this was a first year product for us.
So one of the other questions that was up here just a minute ago that is coming back into that as well is the guy was asking about D30. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
He was asking if the knee pads on the strikes are a similar material where it's flexible, but it gets hard when you hit it.
Yeah. So D3O is a very specific formulation, a copyright written formulation or patented maybe. And it performs in a specific way. However, they formulate that material. The strike pad is a different material, but we call it phase changing because it does harden or distribute energy differently. So whereas D3O hardens, the strike pad, when it gets hit, it tries to send that energy through the rest of the pad to kind of dissipate it. So imagine it kind of like hitting a drum, you see it ripple out if you see it in really slow-mo. Imagine that with energy through the material. So it doesn't harden, but it does distribute it across the knee.
Distributes the energy. Yeah. No, I totally see what you're saying there. I'm telling you, I freaking went down like in a ride up in Tahoe and just kind of like I was coming down this like big rock slab and I think I must have had too much brake on my backside or something. And I slid down. I like slammed my elbow down into this rock. And I know for a fact, like how hard I hit. If I didn't have those pads on that day, I would have like shattered my elbow. I mean, I freaking railed it. And it was one of those things where I hit it so hard, I was like expecting to be hurt. And then I was like, oh, wow. Oh, my God. I'm so glad I had those on because I've never been a pad wearer. I've been riding mountain bikes since the 90s. And it wasn't until just recently whenever I took a pretty good digger. Some of you guys have seen that video up in Auburn. And just that night, I'm laying in bed with both my knees wrapped up, both my elbows wrapped up. And I'm like, this is fucking ridiculous, dude. Yeah. I'm like, what are you doing, man? Like, really? Like, this is the reason that you don't want to wear pads so that you can have this happen to you. I mean, you're riding mountain bikes for God's sakes, And at that point I was like, all right, I'm going to get some. And then just so happened that at the same time that I was introduced to you guys as well. So that really played out well. I will say that those, once again, another product that you guys have that's just unbelievably comfortable. That's one of the things that people ask me about those pads every time they see me with them on. They're like, are they comfortable? And I'm like, dude, sometimes I finish the ride. We stand around, drink beer for like 2 hours and I don't even take them off. Like almost all the, you know what I mean? Like all the other guys you'll see like, what's going on? You lost me with the Anyways, all the other guys, he must have had a little network problem. I'm going to keep talking while he comes back. So all the other guys that
I lost you for a minute.
So all the other guys that are standing around there though with the different types of pads on, like they're almost all of them immediately are like they're down around their ankles, and where it's like I just leave them on. And the only thing that I was concerned about was because that front pad is like so big, like compared to like looking at like a G-Form or some other brands that use that, like that's probably that material you were talking about, that D3O. Like I was like, oh, these things are gonna like wiggle around, they're gonna like slide or something like that, and they don't. So I mean, they stay in place. They totally stay in place. And the elbows was the ones I was the most worried about. And I just did yesterday. I did 22 miles of downhill. I was wearing my pads all day long. I didn't adjust them at all from the time I put them on until the time I was done. And I mean, that was a solid day. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, so, the cool part with that material is, so using your D3O comparison, a D3O pad, if you ever cut open or get a chance to see the actual pad in most body armor, it's pretty solid and bulky. It's actually more like what our Mission pad is, as far as it's a dense, solid-ish foam-like pad. The strikes are actually, the material allows us to make that honeycomb pattern, and because of that, and still maintain its protection, it allows us to make a pad that's really, really breathable and comfortable. And then I've found that the more you wear them, like throughout the ride, even if it's on a climb, your own body heat will heat that pad up and help it conform to you and stay in place. So I put them on at the beginning of a ride, and like you said, end a ride and forget to take them off.
Yeah. It's definitely very easy to like forget that they're there. I mean, and to me, I think that's a good sign, right? You know what I mean? So
yeah, and then you're protected and you don't have to worry about it because you're comfortable. You know?
Somebody was asking in here if you have them in XXL.
No, we only go up to an XL right now. And yeah, they stretch it.
What it is, yeah. I think he was saying he had the XLs, but they're a little tight. So either way, I just figured I'd ask the question real quick. So let's get back to that other bike behind you. What's up with the pivot there?
Yeah, so that's my Firebird 29er.
That was the bike that everybody was talking about at Outer Bike this year, or Inner Bike this year.
Yeah. That so I placed my order basically when it went live, and was lucky enough to get one of the early ones. I just described it to somebody kind of like this. It's like getting a hold of a golf cart without a speed restrictor. You just know you're going to shit.
That sounds like so much fun.
I mean, you just go over anything and everything, and it doesn't care. If anything, you're the one who's holding it back. And it's definitely, I mean, it's a cliche term, but this is the first bike that I experienced where this term made sense. But trophy truck, like, it's 170 mil travel with 29er wheels. It just goes over everything, and you just go faster. I mean, you'd think that lifting your finger off the brake was like hitting an accelerator. You know, it just goes.
I'd like to ride that bike sometime. I think they have those up at Victory Vale. It's one of my local shop up here, just at Auburn. Yep. I'm gonna have to go up there and try one of those out, because I honestly haven't ridden a 29er that I've been in love with yet. So you're making me drink the Kool-Aid. What's that?
What was the last 29er that you rode?
I think the last one that I was on was like a Specialized Camber. Is that a 29er, the Camber?
Yeah, that was their shorter travel. Yeah.
I wasn't like completely like, I didn't hate that one as much as some of the other ones I've ridden, but I can say that I've been riding like almost every 27.5 plus bike that I've ridden, which is almost a 29er. I really enjoyed. But I personally think that the reason I like those better is because I'm a big guy, and I think that those tires really hook up. So it's like, it gives me a sense of like what a 170-pound guy on my tires would feel like, you know? So I'm like, oh wow, this is what it feels like to have traction. So I think I'm willing to give up some of that twitchiness because of that. But we're on the 29er, I feel like, maybe it's because I had BMX, you know, when I was a BMX guy when I was younger or whatever. I just like that like twitchier bike, you know, where you can really kind of pick the line yourself. I feel like the 29er kind of like picks its own line. It's like, hey, you want to go through this rock garden? We're going to go through it kind of the way that I want to do it. You're just going to hang the fuck on. Sorry.
No worries. I totally get what you mean. I mean, this bike's running what is it, a 2.6 I think it's running 2.6s front and rear. And it's got a wide set of Reynolds wheels, carbon wheels on it. It does roll over everything. It doesn't quite have that plus cush feel, but it's a little more accurate with the way that it I don't know, the contact patches. I feel like plus tires, you're kind of accepting a certain amount of sidewall flex, and this doesn't have it. It just has 170 mil of travel to make up for it. And so it does roll over everything. Like you said, if you want to let it pick the line, it will. What I like about what Pivot's done is they did the shorter offset fork, which really I feel has helped with keeping long travel or longer travel 29ers from feeling kind of floppy in the front. Like riding an Evil Reckoning with I guess it's the current 45 mil offset forks. It felt, not only is it a long bike, but that just made it kind of lazy, and you were more of a passenger. So Pivot's done a pretty good job with this thing to not only keep the chain stays short, and then the offset of the fork really kind of helps to keep the wheelbase, or the bike's wheelbase down. It doesn't feel like a 29er, dude. It feels like a 2075 with a little bit extra.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just a matter of me getting on one and probably having one for like a longer period of time than one ride, to kind of just get retrain my brain to like, hey, this is the way that you have to ride with this bike. And I think once I got used to that, then I'd be fine. But who knows? I haven't ridden that bike. I wanted to ride that bike, and I've also wanted to ride the High Tower as well. The Ripmo too. Yeah. I think the Ripmo would be another one to try out. I mean, at the end of the day, if you got all these like pro riders that obviously know how to ride bike a little fucking better than me, saying drinking the juice, then there must be something to it. You know what I mean? So it can't just be like, I'm obviously more skilled in my freaking biking, a taste than they are.
Yeah. It's not just Kool-Aid. They've definitely, not just Pivot, but the new specialized Stumpy on the shorter end of it, the Stumpy Evo. They're just weapons now, dude. They've gotten so good now with the setup geo of these bikes. They're really, really capable. And you do have to ride them a little bit differently, but what's great is that they're so much better balanced nowadays.
Yeah.
Whereas before they were kind of unwieldy. Now it's like, okay, now everybody's playing with the longer reach and setups and slacker head tube angles on wider ranges of travel. And it just makes the 29er wheel format just so capable. And that's what I'm enjoying about it right now, is that I just feel very stable and can plow through anything, but it's also snappy enough that I'm not getting, lost in corners or twisty stuff.
I think that just the way that the geometries of the bikes have evolved over time, it's just like making everybody faster and faster and faster. And the only thing I worry about with like the bigger wheels is like we're just making the trails tamer. So then we just need to then we're going to be on to like make the trails more wicked. And it's like, I don't know, like, do you see what I'm getting at? It's like, then we're going to make the trails so stupid that you can't ride them on 29ers. We're like, oh, we need a 36 so we can go faster. And then we get a 36 and we're going to be like, oh shit, this is just like, it's flat. And now we're, it's like this perpetual thing. Next thing you know, we're going to be on what's that thing called? A freaking penny. We're going to be on like penny farthings and, fucking 54-inch wheel in the front. And
yeah. No, it's definitely an evolution of the sport, but I kind of take Downieville, for example, and Downieville used to be raced on hardtails.
Right.
And look at it now. Like, could you do it? Sure. If you're masochistic and you hate yourself or something, I mean, that just could do it. But why? Like, just, that's wrong.
Right.
But what the bikes have allowed us to do for trails like that is, I don't know, up the fun factor. I mean, you're flying over shit. and
Yeah.
you're just carving things, and your bike's holding up. You're not breaking rims or handlebars or frames as much as you used to because of how well they're being made.
I think I can give you that one for sure. I mean, you're definitely. It does seem to me like the bikes are lasting better. You know, like maybe.
Yeah.
And I mean that's a good thing. The other thing that I was getting at with that though too was the speed that you're going, you know, is like I feel like everybody's getting faster and faster in that terms. And because of that, is there any changes as far as what you guys are designing to like that is like kind of drawing attention that way?
Oh man, you're good at segues.
Because I mean, like this is the deal, dude. Like originally it would be like you wore a downhill helmet when you were going to go 25 or 30 miles an hour, and now it's like you're doing that on the regular. So how do you do that with a half shell? You know? Exactly.
I mean, you're right. Like the big question of you know, what level of protection, you know, a lot of people, it's like, well, how fast are you going and what are you comfortable with? And you're right. These bikes, like this thing, it's got a warp speed button on it. I just haven't figured out where it is, but it keeps seeing on like fast everywhere. And you're right. All bikes are getting faster in that regard. They're more capable, which is nuts. Like imagine doing Downeyville on a live shock setup in like another year or two, like from Fox. Like that would be insane to basically have sports car level suspension and adjustment happening on the fly. You're going to fly down the mountain.
I saw something online about that thing's like making like, so those of you guys that don't know what he's talking about, that Fox has this new shock out that is basically like it's electronically freaking taking like 1,000 samples a second and retuning the shock as you're riding to meet what you're riding it on. Is that a pretty accurate description? I think that's about what I had read.
Yeah, it basically controls how open or shut the valve is. So you still set up the shock like you would for your rider weight and your air pressure and rebound and whatnot. But then it controls the open and closing of the valve, and thousands of a second.
Like that. Yeah, I think it's like 1,000 times a second. I just remember it was just like a freaking insane number.
Think about it this way. We've now got shocks that are, you know, they're pretty good open with climbing. Actually, they've gotten a lot better open, but then you still want to do a climb, and you have to shut the valve or shut the lever, right? You know, reach down, flip the lever, and you're in climb or in your platform mode. Just imagine your bike doing that for you all the time on any surface, on any terrain. So one, you're not having to reach down and do anything with it, and two, it's detecting both pitch and, you know, how high of the incline, far down, and adjusting it on the fly. And so it's just you pedal. Like you don't have to think, you just pedal and the bike soaks it up. Yeah. So it's actually the first thing that I've talked to a couple editors who have ridden it. I have not yet, but they said this is the first piece of like advancement in mountain bike technology that was really truly a different experience. You know, they say riding an e-bike is cool. It definitely changes the way you ride and what is capable, and that's been the buzz in the mountain bike world, at least in what we're talking about. But this suspension shock design that Fox has is really cool because it really changes the way your bike rides. It puts the shock in its best performing setting at any time with your bike. So if you have a bitchin' bike that has a great suspension geometry and dynamics, this just now takes all the guesswork out of the settings and just make it better. So like,
I wish those guys at Fox would go fucking over to SRAM and Shimano and Box and whoever else makes fucking rear derailleurs and just be like, hey guys, here's the secret. Start thinking like this, because I listened to you talk about that and I'm like, that's great. I mean, I really love my suspension and I would love it to be better, but I'd really like to get rid of the fucking derailleur because I think it's I just think it's stupid. Richard, to bring Richard up again, he made a quote one time. I think it was beautiful. He's like, it's like having your balls on your ankle and walking through a lot like a rock minefield, you know, like it just doesn't make any sense. Like, why would you do that? You know, and like, why is it that we don't like, why is this thing still hanging down, seeing how close it can get to the ground where we're riding through all these rocks? You know what I mean?
Well, and it's just where the technology is. If you really look at the bike industry, there's only, 3 big players when it comes to drivetrains. 2, really, to be perfectly honest. Mm-hmm. And there's not been enough development in drivetrain tech yet to change that.
Right.
So the derailleur and chain system is still the best thing. But if you look at like Nikolai Bikes out of Germany, they're a small custom fab shop, and they've been running belt drive systems.
Oh, the belt drive. Yeah. Okay, yeah. They're using like the roll-off hubs or something like that.
Well, they used to do that, and then they're now on pinions, and so like that's the next best effort for that kind of system. And they're getting smaller, but the loss in efficiency as far as like drag and just overall functionality, it's not there yet. But it's because it's a small market. And e-bike motors are going to help that, though.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's the answer. All I know is the answer is it doesn't make any sense. We're still using a derailleur. You know what I mean? That's all I can predict. I can't predict it any further than that. But I mean, I think that I did ride one of those zero-road bikes that has that pinion in it, and I will tell you, I've never felt that confident in a corner in my entire life because of that weight being there right in the bottom and the middle of the bike. It keeps the thing like it just is like riding on Velcro, and then it still was nimble. And that bike that I was riding was like a 35-pound bike or a 36-pound. I can't remember. It was like 30. It was heavy. But compared to my Bronson, I still couldn't tell when I was riding it.
Yeah, well, and you think about it, like when you get really geeky on pinion systems or drive integrated drive systems, the added benefit is now that you have even less weight and on your rear wheel and on your swing arm. So you don't have a derailleur, you don't have a cassette, you don't have to deal with an really large cassette system. You just need to hold a cog. You could lighten and optimize that rear wheel, then widen the stance of the spokes and everything else, and create an even stronger wheel. And then move all that complication to the center of the bike where the drivetrain is. So I do think there's going to be a evolution of those systems, but they're not in demand enough yet, and the big guys haven't decided to really take that on and say, okay, here you go, here's your geared system, and make your bike around it. I'm doing that with e-bikes, but that's because it's an easier buy-in, I think, right now. The populace is more receptive towards it.
Right.
But yeah,
I think it's a matter of it's just a matter of time, and I think one of those companies builds a badass bike, and somebody like one of your riders, like Nikolai, that gets out there and just freaking like podiums the shit out of something on one of those bikes, and all of a sudden people start looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, for this it would be enduro racing, like that. Yeah. That would be really where I would see a system like that benefiting that demographic, and it would take a racer's perspective on it to develop it, because there are existing pinion systems, but they're not efficient or enough for racing as far as how optimized they are.
I think the thing is that's funny too. I mean, I think the companies like Shimano and SRAM, like they have the R&D money to spend in that, or they should, or you would expect them to, maybe more so than a new company coming out and trying to do all that R&D and really not going to have any return for quite some time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's companies like Pinion that are taking it on because nobody else will right now.
Right.
I mean,
you got to have a Tesla in the room, right?
What's that?
It's like a Tesla, it's like somebody has to go out and spend all the money because nobody else is going to do it, because they're like, hey, we're still making money every year. Why the hell we need to do that?
Exactly. Now that, I mean, you think about, I think the biggest complaint that I've heard about gearbox systems like the Pinion is its degrees of engagement. And so like it's not as direct as a regular cassette is, and especially since now we've got i9 is doing a 5 or 6 pulse system that's like every 6 or 3 degrees of engagement. Yeah. So it's like, wow, that's near instant engagement, and then you're going to a Pinion system that has a lot of slop in it.
I think Project 321 has more engagement than that new i9.
That could be true.
Yeah. I think it's like 216 points of engagement on their new one. I think he said it was like 1.5 degrees or something like that. It's crazy. And essentially, it's like what you said, though. It's like always engaged. It's almost never not engaged. Yeah.
The only 2 players that I know that are out in the market with instant engagement hubs are Stealth, old school BMX and mountain bike company, and then Onyx is really also bigger in BMX. But they're making more and more offerings for bikes, and just imagine anytime you move your pedal forward, basically it's engaged. You can really kind of like stutter pedal over rocky sections really well with that because you have that instant engagement.
Yeah, and I think Onyx is their big problem, from what I knew in the past, was that they were heavy, and I think they're starting to get their weight down now too.
Yeah, but it's still a lot of metal and a complex power transfer system compared to a pulse system.
Yeah,
it's a challenging thing to change and design into and keep it lightweight.
Theirs is like a complete kind of like a gear kind of system in there instead of a pulse system, right?
Sprag clutch, I think, is what it's called.
That's what it is. Yeah, I knew it was something like that.
The minute that you deliver forward torque to the cassette hub, and I don't really know how, but it basically engages this bearing system that grabs the axle and spins the wheel forward. So it happens almost instantly. So that's why it's great for BMX guys who want to deliver max power right away and get it right to the wheel. So
somehow we got way the fuck off topic. Originally, I was asking you about if we were what was the deal with the helmets and are you like up in your helmet game? And I think part of the reason that I asked that is I watched this YouTube video the other day that this motorcycle company, I think they're out of Canada, did. And they were basically just talking about how DOT is like a complete joke. And it was like something that was like formed a really long time ago. And the standards really have nothing to do with like what we should be paying attention to, but it's just something that people are like, oh yeah, DOT, it's great. And so that's what kind of like led me to think about, okay, we're going faster. So is that changing? I would imagine that you guys are probably holding yourself to some kind of standard that may not even be a like quote unquote standard yet.
Yeah. So kind of hit on a couple different things there. We are riding faster on these bikes more often. That's what's so great about them, that we just geeked out about how just you fly down the mountain so much more easily now and with perceived control. But when you lose it, it's a lot higher consequence.
Perceived control. That's beautiful. I'm going to talk about that next time I ride. I'm definitely perceiving control. There is definitely no control there, though.
No. My bike is definitely smarter at riding than I am. It's just the idiot who's on top of it is pointing it in the wrong direction.
Right.
No, it's definitely not. But so what we're doing is we still, at least in the bike world, to stick on that one for a minute before addressing DOT, we still have that CPSC standard, that 300 Gs, that your worst case scenario is. We're building in below that and then offering more options for you to feel more secure. So what we're working on, and it's taken us longer than we wanted to, is a more breathable full face. You've seen them from Fox and with the Pro Frame, and then you see the new Troy Lee Stage. And the Met Parachute was out there for a long time before that, and then even the old Switchblade from Giro.
I rode with the Bell Mips DH full face the other day. That was actually what I rode yesterday on that. That was the first time that I've ridden the helmet. And holy shit, you can breathe in that thing just like it doesn't feel like you have a full face on at all.
So that's what we're going after, and companies like Bell kind of found just the right format and package to deliver that in, at least to carve out this new breathable full face market.
Yeah.
That niche. And after that, you saw like still in the full face world, but like the IXS Zult was claiming a really ventilated full face, but it's still a really big, bulky thing, and it doesn't breathe that well. We want to get down to that everyday rider who, you know, wants to go shred Auburn from his door and would love to send it over any jump or any rock garden that he sees and not worry about his dental bill, you know, if he screws up. And so we're working on a breathable full face too. And that's where we see with everybody riding faster or being on bikes that can ride faster is making a helmet lighter and more breathable and smaller, but still meet that worst case scenario standard. So one of those helmets that's, well, we've been working on it. You can actually go search for it as far as some spy photos, but we've got a full face, breathable full face in the works. We call it, well, you'll see it.
We'll see it soon enough. Right on.
Yeah, you'll see it.
You don't have to let the cat out of the bag, but I'm sure we wouldn't freaking mind hearing about it.
Well, and that's it's our take on the pro frame and the stage. And so, but what I can tell you is that whereas like the Fox still looks like a full face, the pro frame still looks like a regular full face that's just been hogged out. And then you've got the stage, which is a little more shapely, just like any Troy Lee that you'd expect. It's got that style, but it's a little more breathable. It looks like it's there. You say that the Bell Super DH is even more breathable. We're going for our interceptor level of breathability. So basically think of a full-blown Race XC style helmet or roadie helmet, but with a chin. Like we want to basically make you feel like you got a little extra protection in front of you. So no sacrifice from breathability or channeling or venting, but it will pass the DH standard for the chin bar. That doesn't mean that it's meant for full-blown downhill runs or a day at the park.
But it's meant to keep you from busting your fucking teeth out when you think you're a little badder than you are. That's basically what you're getting at, right? You know?
Yeah. I mean, and not to pick on a competitor, but they actually fixed this in subsequent years. But the first the first Bell Super R with the removable chin bar. Great concept. That chin bar was really flexy, and in fact, you can go back and look at their own testing videos that they used for their marketing, and you could see the chin bar tapping the dummy's face. And what that was meant was more of a rash guard, and in subsequent years, they actually reinforced it to be stiffer so that it didn't have that compression. So we don't want the chin bar to smack you in the face. We want the helmet to transfer that load around your head and somewhere else. So the DH standard for ASTM for the chin bar is what we'll adhere to just say it's a minimum level of protection for us. But it's meant to be an everyday kind of riding helmet. You know, leave your door, go climb for an hour or so, and then shred trail the gnarliest stuff you can with the confidence that you've got a little bit extra if you get a little too rowdy.
Yeah, I mean, it totally makes sense. And I think I had a conversation with you about this. Maybe it was 6 months ago or something like that, where it was like, you want that little bit of extra like protection, but you don't necessarily feel like you need to ride a whole DH helmet, you know? And you want it to be like super light. You want it to be super breathable. And basically you're like, I want my cake and I want to eat it too, you know, make it happen.
Yeah. The cool thing is that it's taken a couple tries, but not only have companies, including Cali, work to change our aesthetic, but we're also using new technologies, and we're able to in mold or use new materials that allow these designs to happen. For us, that integrated chin bar is what we want to go with. The removable styles, I'll be honest, I've rarely seen people who actually have either a Giro Switchblade or a Bell Super, carry the chin bar around for the rides here in Santa Cruz for Highway 9. Like those are gnarly enough to where you could use a full face. You choose not to because the runs are only like a minute, and then you got to climb, or in half, and you got to climb again. So we don't want to have any complicated latch systems or anything around your head. That's more metal, more places to fail. So we're going after that integrated chin bar. And because of that, that chin bar can act in conjunction with the rest of the helmet shell to dissipate that energy rather than relying on those anchor points for where it's attached.
Yeah, I think whenever I talked to Brad about this, I think basically, I mean, he summed it up as, I don't think it's as safe. So I don't want to do that.
It doesn't, I mean, it serves a purpose and a niche and people like it. I know that he said that of the systems that we've seen, the Bell system with the wraparound is the best because it's the best chance for that chin bar to transfer energy around you. But yeah, it's just not as safe. It's introducing a weak point just for a matter of convenience and not for safety. And Cali will always put safety ahead of fashion and style.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't look at it. Yeah.
I think that's funny that you say that. I think we're talking about having crashes and whatnot, and I want to make sure that we bring this up about you because actually one of the people that's on the live chat right now was saying that there are helmets at your facility right now because they are using or they were doing the helmet replacement program. So for those of you that don't know, Cali actually has a helmet replacement program. I'll let Patrick talk about it, but that was one of the things that really surprised me when I went down there, that you have not a 50% crash replacement, not a 60% crash replacement, like a full replacement, like go crash your helmet. And there's requirements that I'll let Patrick, go ahead. Tell us about that, Patrick.
Yeah, let's pitch the marketing guy out right here. All right. Yeah. So Brad, founder of Cali, and our lead engineer, one, he cares about every rider who crashes, whether it's in our helmet or not. But those who do crash in our helmets and have, since he founded the company, have shared their stories, or said, "Hey, I had a bad crash," or "Thanks." He will ask for pictures of the helmet, and if the person's willing to send it in, he would send him a new helmet just so that he could get the helmet back and examine it. And he figured pay it forward and get the person rolling again. So he's always done that under the radar, and we've had an official crash replacement policy, but it was always loose and we ran it through shops. But in 2016, we kind of legitimized it because we realized that it was really a cool thing that we were doing, both for the rider as well as for Cali. So we implemented our lifetime crash replacement program. And what that was, or what it is basically if you bought a bike helmet from Cali, you can register it, ride it, and for the life of the helmet, if you have a crash, you can file your a claim, and we'll have you send it in, and then you can get a new helmet for the cost of shipping. That's the only thing, but you won't have to pay for the helmet. You just have to pay for us to send it to you.
And shipping is $600.
Something like that. I mean, we keep it as reasonable as we can. We run it through in the US, we run it through our shopping cart. And I think if you're buying, or if you do UPS, it might be $10 to $12. And if you do postal service, it's $6 or something.
Right.
So
I think that's still better than buying a new helmet, because I know I bought a handful of new ones and I was never happy about it. Once I bought a helmet and it was like 3 rides later, I freaking broken up the one I just bought, and I was like, oh man, I was so livid. And it's like, I'm not one of those people that like has absolutely no moral value. I couldn't like take it back to the store and be like, what the hell, man? It's defective. I was like, dude, you ate shit. It's you gotta pay your play.
Yeah. I mean, other companies have tried to do certain things, like I think, and other companies have done crash replacement programs. One of them I can think of off the top of my head is like, I think Trek offers a first 6 months or maybe 3 months or something where just like that scenario is you only go out for a couple rides, they'll replace it. But that's what's different about ours is we believe in getting these helmets back for additional examination and testing so much that we want to offer it for a customer who has it for the life of the helmet. And we don't want it to be like, oh, 3 years later they have a crash and they're like, oh, well, I got to buy a new helmet. And some actually our distributors and retailers were initially kind of mad at us for making it an official policy because they thought it would be lost sales.
Right. To them, they're like, what the hell, man? You just screwed us there.
No, but I think was most of the shops who say that are maybe not leveraging their relationship with customers as much, because even though we run this program directly out of Cali HQ, nationwide, if a store is willing to work with Cali and is already a Cali dealer, we will work with you to replace that helmet on the spot for the customer.
Right. So that would build value for their brand so that people would be like, hey, man, I bought this helmet over at Joe's Bikes and freaking I wrecked in it. And I came down there and they gave me a new one off the shelf and they dealt with Cali on the back end for me. That's why I want to go over there, and maybe I'll pay the extra 10% for what their parts cost compared to Amazon because, hey, they're doing me a service. So I totally see what you're saying. Yeah, I think on the other hand too, it could be, like a spike in sales as well, where I know whenever I first did the interview with Brad, I mean, there were some people on there that were like, dude, I'm going to buy a new helmet just because these guys are legit, man. Like, yeah. So, I mean, I think that's, I think for me, it really like speaks to how you guys stand behind your product. And I think that's awesome. I've seen so many other companies in my life that may not have anything even to do with biking at all, but like to really stand behind your product in that manner where you're, 100% willing for the lifetime of the product, like that just says something about where you stand at, and then outside of that, it's just like as a consumer, I mean, it's almost like getting a free product, it's like, you're like, it's not an if with when you break your helmet, it's more like a when, so.
And this all has to do with Brad. He wants riders to feel safe. He will tell you Cali will never produce a helmet that he would not trust putting his kids in.
And I believe that about Brad. I mean, honestly, he just is he's just this really stand-up guy. I mean, honestly, out of and I told you this when I was in Interbike. I mean, out of all the companies, and that's not like I'm some freaking world-renowned, mountain bike expertise, that just, has met everybody. But out of the companies that I've met, like he's just a really stand-up guy, probably my favorite that I've met so far, Yeah,
and it's cool to see that and be a part of that kind of commitment to rider and rider safety. And, so many times, and this was also a motivator for making this an official policy, was where it kind of kicked off was 2016 Sea Otter, when we did the big helmet exchange there, where we let anybody walk up with any helmet and exchange it for a brand new Cali. But they had to give it.
I didn't know you guys did that. That's freaking hella cool.
Oh, yeah. No. So part of this started as just a marketing gimmick to basically piss everybody off. I mean, right. It was
shake it up, like, man. So you basically went down there with your line of helmets and was like, anybody show the fuck up here. You give me yours, I'll give you mine.
Yeah. So it started awesome. No, it was. It was really to just have everybody possible walking around in a Cali helmet over the course of those 5 days,
right?
Or 4 days, and we really weren't sure about it. The brass was nervous as all hell because we didn't know if it was going to be 50 helmets or 500. It ended up being 1,000.
Holy shit, that's a lot of helmets, man.
Yeah. So okay, we definitely pissed people off.
Right.
There were comments everywhere. But what happened is we didn't just get the whole like, yeah, fuck you guys. Like what we really saw was in the helmets that were getting turned in, especially the first day or two when people really didn't believe it and know. By like the third or last day, you definitely knew that somebody had called their buddies and said like, all right, grab every helmet that you have in the garage and come down here stat.
Right. You know? Get over here right now, dude. Yeah. Well, or they got one day one and they went back home, got their other shitty helmet, came back day two, and they were like, I'm fucking doing it again.
Oh, dude, and then no, I can't say that bad. But certain groups of people is like they told one person and then 100 people knew. So it was just like wildfire. But the first few days, the first day or two was literally just people, because we didn't promote it. We didn't tell anybody we were doing it. We showed up and just did it guerrilla and started walking around looking for people who had kind of shady looking helmets.
Right.
And what we saw though was just how messed up helmets were that people were still riding. Like they were like, oh, I don't want to replace it. Why? Because helmets are expensive, or I like one, or whatever. I had a guy with a full face whose visor had been broken off in a crash, and he had a wood screw drilled into his helmet. And it was deep. It was probably almost a inch long screw. And I was like, how close is that to piercing through the styrofoam and hitting his head? Right. But he had no problem with it.
If he has like the perfect crash, it's like, oh, why do you have this wood screw implanted in your forehead, dude? Yeah. Oh, well, I was trying to hold my visor on, man.
Yeah. Yeah, it was better than that shitty plastic screw. I mean, we saw people with broken retention systems that were held together with either zip ties, or one was even using safety pins to kind of guide the strap through the retention system because that part had broken. Helmets that were legitimately cracked, and they were still riding it. We told people, we were like, you realize your helmet's been hit. And he's like, oh, yeah, I've gone down on that. And I'm like, but it's cracked right here. And people just didn't know and care. And so we wanted to break down that barrier. And after a while, we were just feeling good because it's like, look at all these crappy helmets that, not crappy because they're somebody else's, but because
crappy because they've been beat to hell, right?
Crap. And people were hanging onto them because they were the perceived cost of their own safety. Yeah. So
I think a lot of people. Go ahead.
So circling around on Brad's, kindness was, this policy is meant to allow people who ride our helmets not worry about crashing. Like if you crash, we want you to be safe. We will replace that helmet. And it's been a good program. Luckily, we've not had anybody really abuse it. And for those that take the time to learn about it, they're stoked on it. And we're stoked to have them.
But ultimately, they can't really abuse it much. The most abuse that they're going to do is one crash, right? Because like you can't replace the same helmet twice. Well, so I mean, once you get that replacement helmet, is that covered then too?
No. So when you crash your replaced helmet, it is then a steep discount, and I'm sorry, I'm not remembering what it is right now, but I think it's definitely more than 25% off the replacement of that helmet. So anytime you put money down on the helmet, it resets the clock. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the way we limit it, and that's tracked through some of the registration program that we have online. Serial number and your name and email. So we're going to replace the helmet, and we're going to help you get into even that replacement. And that's when you put money down. But we have not had that many people have that many issues. They've been really good about it, and people are surprised and stoked by it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I was blown away. I was like, man, I wish I would have known about you guys a long time ago, because I definitely, for a long time, I questioned why I was wearing a helmet, because I was like, man, I've been riding a bike for like 15 years and I still haven't broken a helmet. Is this really worth it? Like all this freaking pain in the ass. And then like the first time that I went down so hard, I didn't actually know that when people say you got your bell rung, that you like literally hear the sound of a bell like ringing until that day. And like I hit the ground and it was like, dong! And I swear to God, I sat up like I was like in the fucking cartoons and there was like stars circling around my head and shit, you know?
Yep.
And I was like, holy shit, man. And it was kind of like a side impact. Like I had gone over the handlebars, but it's my head slammed into the side. And I was just like, holy shit, man. Like if I would have done that and say I was on a night ride or I was riding by myself or like didn't have a helmet on, like or if I didn't have a helmet on and did that, like I could have just died right there, you know, like, okay, wearing this helmet's been worth it, you know? And then for whatever reason, maybe, you know, after that, I was like, my skill set was getting better or whatever. Maybe it was getting worse, but I mean, I've broken a few helmets since then. And it's definitely every time that it happens, you're holding this thing in your hand and you're thinking like, this thing definitely saved my life. And one of those helmets that I wrecked on, I took home, and me and one of my buddies were having some beer, and we were like, hey, this thing's fucking toast already. Let's hit it with this little baby sledge and see like what it takes to break this thing apart.
Yeah.
That thing took some fucking abuse for us to break, man. And so that like made me feel like even more like, holy shit, like if I'm hitting this thing with this sledgehammer this hard and it's stopping that, like, wow, I feel like so much safer wearing this thing now. You know, it's definitely worth it.
No, it's you only have one brain, and your level of protection is whatever you choose it to be. The good news is every helmet is certified to a minimum level of safety. That's that CPSC standard. What you're seeing from Cali is we're branching out from that, and we're definitely pushing the envelope of what we can do to make that helmet safer and more durable, man. And I'm glad that you're wearing whatever helmet that was. You know, and they are made to take some abuse, but they're also meant to be a one and done. I mean, any one of those sledgehammer hits would have been a dead, you know, that made that helmet dead.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I said, it was already cracked at that point, you know, because otherwise I'm not just like, hey, I'm going to throw away $120 because I'm drunk. Wait a minute, I do that every time I go.
That's a real problem,
never
man.
mind.
I mean, but that kind of mentality is kind of a real problem of like, oh, I've spent $200 or $150 or, you know, $300 in some cases for helmets, and I'm not even half shells, and people are like, oh, it's just a little crack. I don't want to fucking replace it. I spent all this money. If it's cracked, it's compromised, and hopefully it when it was doing its job. I mean, you pack it in a bag wrong, and you kind of stupid and you fucked up. But if you've cracked it or you see a crack in your helmet, please replace it. And
I think that's the thing too, is a lot of guys, this is what I was going to say earlier, man. A lot of guys will take a little digger. They look at their helmet on the top and they're like, oh yeah, I got some mud in there, a little grass pushed into the visor, brush that off. Nope, it's not dented. I'm good. And they never actually flip it over and look at the inside. And you're like, dude, you see this little thing that looks like a little hair right there and there and there and there and there? Like this whole thing like did exactly what it was supposed to do. It dissipated all the energy, all those places, and all those cracks are now weak points. So go ahead and try that same crash again, and that could be the one where, oh, I had a helmet on, I don't understand why I have brain damage. You know what I mean? Like, to me, like you said earlier, you only have one brain. So I feel like as much as it hurts to go in and pay for another helmet, it's gonna hurt a lot more when you're like freaking, you know, Chris Reeves in a chair like a quadriplegic because you fucking didn't want to spend another $100, you know?
Yeah, and it's also making sure that you examine your helmet from time to time and make sure that it's okay. You know, you just gotta pay attention to it. It's of all the gear that we wear as a rider, I don't think there's anything more important than a helmet. Like, you could get away or excuse away a lot of things, but a helmet is not one of them. And I know that seems biased coming from the marketing guy of a helmet company, but you can break an arm, you can break a leg, you can break your back, but you only got one head, dude. And once that's gone, that's it. So replace your helmet often if you can. I mean, if you're an active rider, just make it a thing, you know. But if you're a Cali rider and you do take a dinger, we'll replace it.
Right on. So you guys also started didn't you start in moto and then the bike kind of came later?
Yeah. So originally, Brad was working on, he had a carbon factory, he still does, in China, and they were making carbon fiber and fiberglass or tri-weave shells for motorcycle helmets for customers. And he was looking at how these things were manufactured, and being the tinkering engineer that he is, he was like, well, why aren't we in molding these? Because the way a motorcycle helmet or a full face, many full faces are made, is the outer shell, whether that be plastic, ABS, fiberglass, carbon, is formed one or separately, and then the EPS liner on the inside is formed separately, and then the two are shoved together. But that generates additional air pockets and imperfections within the manufacturing process that can actually add more G's to your impact. The way Brad got around that, he figured out if you could fuse the shell and foam together, what we call composite fusion, and in mold those two things, you can actually create a stronger and more efficient energy dissipation system, so a better performing helmet.
Right, and at that point, like I think you was like you could make the outer shell smaller and cut some weight because of that, because you were actually molding them together.
Yes, you could thin out the shell, so that shell could then deform and dissipate the energy over a larger area of the helmet, which is better for energy dissipation. And then the foam itself could be made softer, but still pass the same level of protection. So being that he's also into motorcycles and he was already making motorcycle shells, he decided to take a crack at solving this problem of in molding a full face, which nobody had done. And it took him 3 years to do it, but he did, and we started making moto helmets to start, and then street helmets. And that was where we were founded in 2008. And that's where the company started. And then I think it was in 2010 that they introduced bike. And then it took off right from there. Although moto we still have, and we have always maintained to some degree, bike has just taken off more so for us. And but yeah, we started in moto with full faces.
So somebody else just asked a great question, and they're asking, do helmets have a general lifespan? Is it like, like a propane tank? It's got a stamp on it somewhere that says, hey, after 10 years, this is no good. Like the foam's going to start breaking down or something like that. Is there something like that?
So the industry has had a general practice of saying replace your helmet every 3 to 5 years. Part of that was marketing. Part of that was legal saving their butt. Part of that was a real thing. Like your EPS foam can degrade when exposed to extreme environments over periods of time. But
so you mean the oven that is my garage is baking my gear?
Could be, depends on the heat. No, literally, we had this happen. We had this exploded view of one of our bike helmets, the Maraca, and it sat in a plexiglass frame because we had all the pieces that we threw into this helmet, which is something like 20 different pieces, and it was all suspended in this really cool display. But if it sat out in the heat, and it literally baked the helmet to the point where the EPS foam started to expand again. And although I couldn't tell you how much that changed the properties of the helmet, Brad said, yeah, once you see that on a helmet, you should replace it. Like it's not good for it. But as far as the standard goes, helmets.org released a study from a few years ago where they took helmets that had been manufactured over the last 25 years and tested them, both new, old stock, and used, against, they put them through their testing standards again and tried to see how they performed. The general result of that was that helmets did not necessarily degrade with general use,
right.
Typical use. So Could a helmet bought 15 years ago still be safe? Sure, for that standard, but I could say from being behind the curtain, and we've gotten a lot better at molding foam and different designs and better protection systems designed into those shells. I would want a newer helmet simply because technology gets better. Nobody wants to use one of those old Motorola Razors anymore. You know,
Right.
They want to use an iPhone or a touchscreen phone. Why? Because it's just better. They're more functional for a wider range of things. So in that sense, is there a lifespan? No, not necessarily, but good practice is replace your helmet 3 to 5 years, or whenever you feel like you may have damaged the helmet.
Yeah.
And if you're an active rider like yourself, I would say you would want to be replacing your helmet in that window simply because you're exposing it to mud, dirt, grease, body fluids, all kinds of stuff. Right. Yeah.
I think
there's
a pretty good chance that the way that I ride, that within 3 to 5 years, I'm going to take some kind of dinger to it anyway. So yeah, I don't think any of my helmets are going to last that long anymore.
Yeah. It's even the little hits, like bashing it in, like throwing it in your car, or the helmet falls from your handlebars. None of those things might necessarily in a single instance compromise that helmet, but over time, why not? You should replace it. It's meant to wear out. We've not gotten to the point yet where a helmet is endlessly usable. That technology doesn't exist. Helmets are meant to be replaced right now, when they've been compromised, and also just from the materials we use. It's good practice.
So is there something that is like involved in the like R&D process where with the helmet where you're considering the helmet for more like concussion prevention, or are you really trying to just do like the catastrophic kind of prevention, or can you talk about that?
Yeah. So if you ever step outside of the United States, you'll find that there is a lot of other brands within the bike industry, which is no surprise. There are brands that are here that other countries never see, and vice versa. But what you start to see is just the plethora of brands of helmets. You could, in theory, go over with a suitcase full of cash and go to a helmet manufacturer and open a biker helmet brand, and buy a shell and throw on your designs. It's kind of like bikes, to a point. If all you're doing is looking to create helmets that you like to look at and meet a standard, Brad and Callie is focused on R&D and trying to make better and better helmets. So although, take for example our Chakra, our $45 entry-level helmet. It's a ventilated helmet with a visor on the front of it. It's very unassuming, but and we could have called it done as soon as it passed CPSC, that 3-meter drop test and the 300 Gs transferred to the head. Well, what Brad did with that helmet is when he was testing it, is he started to drop the foam density for the samples that he was impacting until he found out how soft, the softest foam he could put into that and still pass all of the tests. So in that sense, even though it's a single density foam helmet, just in molded, it's got the lowest density foam possible. Mm-hmm. We take that same mentality of making the safest helmet we can and apply it to every helmet within our line. And mm-hmm. So as far as going towards the idea of, are you building a helmet towards concussion, we're always trying to prevent any amount of energy transfer to the head. And a concussion is just where you damage your brain, basically. So we're trying to mitigate and slow the brain down and protect you from those impacts. So CPSC is just that bare minimum level of protection. That's it. Like, you're going to live, but you're going to be a vegetable. Kind of like Snell racing world, right? Or for the motor world. Snell is an extremely hard test to pass, and the helmets are just so hard, and the only justification for it is that, oh, you're in motor racing, you're going fast, so you need this. What in reality is we need the spectrum. we need to protect against those worst case scenarios, and we need to protect against the little mundane hits, because at lower speeds, those helmets actually become like having just a metal cup on your head and getting hit with that if it's too hard. So like some would say, do you need to change the standards? No, we don't need to change the standards right now. We need to get better at making helmets that address a wider range of impacts and use technology to our advantage to say, okay, CPSC is the standard, but we can do, we can actually provide protection through all these lower G forces as well. So we're always working towards that. If we can put softer stuff next to your head, softer stuff is going to dissipate energy better and make it as light as possible and as small as possible. So in a rambling sense, that's how we address helmet design, is not to meet a design standard and then make it safe. It's let's make this helmet for the customer we believe it to be and make sure that the safety is taken care of, and then go into the design process.
Right on, man. What is one of the things that surprised you the most about the industry that you're in now, like working with the helmet industry? Then, because if I remember correctly, you weren't in bike per se before you worked for Cali, right?
I was in the bike industry, but I was in accessories and apparel.
Right. So you weren't in the protective realm then.
No,
so
no.
What was the thing that whenever you first started where you were just like, holy shit, this is like this opens my eyes?
So I got my start in the bike industry behind the curtain working for Lesign, and that's accessories, pumps, multi-tools.
Right.
The design and production cycle for that stuff is really short. Like, it's not hard and doesn't take a lot of time to make a multi-tool or a hand pump or tire levers or all this other stuff. It's fairly quick. But helmets require just a massive amount of investment and time. It takes a minimum of 2 years. On a fast track, you can design and test and certify and put into production a helmet no sooner than 2 years is how long it takes.
So like whatever anybody's working on right now, like if you had a great idea today that was just going to change the market, you still got 2 years ahead of you before you can get that out to the public.
Well, I'm looking at new products with Brad, and the first time that he did this, he's like showing me new sketches and stuff. I was like, oh my God, this is rad. When can we get it? He's like 2020, 2022. You know,
you're like, don't show the marketing guy this shit, dude.
Well, I mean, it's good because that's also one of the cool things about how small Cali is that I get to not only do my marketing thing, but I also get to see and interact with the product development side and work with Brad and see what he does. But it definitely was the molding process and how challenging it is, because a helmet mold, like, kind of like bikes, or like carbon fiber bikes, for example, they're made one by one. Like, you look at carbon fiber bikes and you think that they might be made by machine, and it's all hand laid, and it's one mold per size, that's it. Like, and helmets are the same way. The helmet mold is super complex. Take your helmet and imagine a steel cube about 2 feet across or 2 feet square all around it. Like, that's the size of a helmet mold. All metal, it's expensive. So time to make that, and the time to get to design the helmet and bring it up to rapid prototyping, SLA, and then commit to actually cutting metal. It's that time. And then the certification process after that. And we have to do it per size. So it's not like we make one helmet, we make a small, medium, and call it good. If we make a size range of 3-5 different shells, we have to test all of them and make all of them. Mm-hmm. And that was what really slowed me down. I was like, wow, it's not that quick. It's actually longer than I thought.
So you guys don't manufacture your helmets like in your facility that you have here in Northern California. You actually get them made somewhere else, right?
Yeah, we work with one of the largest just helmet manufacturer for factories in China.
So basically, I'm making the assumption that that's kind of the similar situation as bikes then too. It's like there's a couple of factories that probably make everybody's stuff, and it's just a matter of you working with them to make sure that your product is built to the specifications that you want.
True, except for I would say that the added complexity and just kind of the size requirements of helmet manufacturing. I mean, there's just a lot of equipment and space needed. And then it's not the cleanest manufacturing process. I mean, our company, or not our company, but the factory is as conscious as they can be for the materials that we're using. And for the prices that we're getting them, we can only manufacture in Asia right now. There's not a lot of places that can produce helmets that are made to the level and complexity that we and other companies within the bike industry designed to.
I think one of the things when I was talking to Knight that he said that really kind of rang to me as well was he was like, look, here you have a workforce that is like highly experienced at this process. So, and in his case, he's talking about, laying carbon, but I think it would fall to the same. It's like, you don't necessarily have a workforce that's been doing this for like a very long time here in the US that's also extremely affordable. So it's like, yeah, you could start this in the US, but you're going to have a really long time to bring all those people up to speed, and you're still not going to have the experience of some people that have been doing it for 30 years. So like, why? Like, it doesn't necessarily make sense.
Yeah, you just don't have the infrastructure behind it. I mean, could it be done? Sure, but the helmet would probably cost 4 times as much.
Right.
Like, it's just
and we already know people aren't going to replace their helmet when they're crashing it half the time anyway, over $100. So you tell them, hey, let's buy this one now for $600. It's just not going to happen. So
yeah, it's just that's where the manufacturing is. China and the industry got behind manufacturing over there for that, and we don't have a path to bringing manufacturing back to the U.S. for helmets, at least. Like, they're also experts. Like, the factory actually, all helmet manufacturers are like this. Like, we design our helmet and we do as much testing digitally, like in the computer, as we can. But then we still have to rely on the factory's expertise to help us transition that to an actual manufactured product. And there's a whole workflow behind that the factory is assisting us and other brands on. Like Fox, for example, their designers, they make the shell, do all the stuff, but they still have to work closely with the factory to make sure that not only does their design, or the factory makes the design that Fox wants, but that Fox makes a design that is safe, repeatable, and engineered properly for production. So it's a symbiotic relationship in that respect.
So you guys have also, I'm going to change gears a little bit again. You guys have a handful of pro riders that you have that are like sponsored as well.
Yeah.
I think who you guys have Nikolai. I always screw up his last name. Is it like Radatkin or something like that?
Yeah, Rogatkin. He's been probably one of our longest standing riders. I think we picked him up when he was like 13, and really early within. I think as soon as Cali was making helmets, so probably. Well, it was before my time, so probably around 2012 or earlier. And he's probably our highest profile athlete that we have. He's the king of spin and king of crankworks. And right now, well, not king of crankworks, he's the Triple Crown winner. Nikolai is definitely one of those riders who we are happy to have in one of our helmets, not just because he's on top of the world right now, but he does some really aggressive stuff, and we really believe in our products and our helmets, and we're glad that he's wearing them. His rampage.
There's a video on your website that you showed me of him just taking this like gnarly spot. Was it like Rampage or something like that? That he just like rolls down the side of this fucking mountain. And when you see like the POV footage of it, you're like, oh, that's not that bad. And then you see the freaking video shot from like the helicopter, and you watch him like roll down the side of this fucking mountain. You're like, holy shit. And somebody told me the other day when I was talking, I think it was when I was talking to you guys up at Interbike, that after that he got up and then he like immediately sent like this like 80-foot gap, like 27 seconds later, like just got up, walked away from it, and just like boom, right back at it, like full animal style.
Yep. That was Rampage 2015, the one and only time that Nikolai competed in Rampage. And you know, it's kind of funny. We joke that we would have loved to see him win, but we've probably gotten more value out of him crashing than anything else. And it's not just because, hey, we're selling helmets, but it was a spectacular crash. I mean, he
looks like a rag doll just being chucked off the side of a cliff, man. He's like just like whoop, 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 you know, head over what do they call it? Head over teacups or something? I don't know what the fuck that is.
Ass over tea kettle.
There you go. Thank you.
He fell 30 feet, like straight down. You know, it was I think it still is the gnarliest or the biggest crash in the sense of like distance fallen, and he free fell. Like nothing was there to catch him. It wasn't like he was catching part of the ridgeside going down. And yeah, he luckily was conscious. Said he wasn't concussed, and got up, straightened himself out, and then cleared the 73 or 75-foot canyon gap right after that, and then finished his run. Yeah. Right. And then we got the helmet back because that crash was actually kind of where we proved to ourselves and the world I can't say it. We basically proved our LDL stuff worked.
Yeah, because that was a test model that you guys had just given him with the LDL in it, right?
Yeah, we had rushed that helmet. Brad hand laid the LDL strips inside of it, sent it off to the printer or the painter, and then it arrived in time for Nikolai to wear it for Rampage. And then here's the really cool part. We had done testing in the lab with the Shiva, which is the helmet that Nikolai was wearing, with the Imperial College of London. And it actually, we based all of our testing off of it. We said that 30% of low G forces or subconcussive forces were reduced, and then rotational forces were reduced by 25%. Okay, cool. Those are numbers. They don't mean anything, right? That's all done in the lab. Well, we were able to get the helmet back and get access to, well, we didn't, but the lab got access to the Red Bull footage and used the slow-mo and tracked his fall and calculated. Basically, they did a crash recreation, and they calculated
like
what's yeah. And then we repositioned the test rig to basically recreate that crash and that impact, and we tested what it was with a regular Shiva and then a Shiva with LDL, and it actually correlated with our findings. It actually took him from an 80% chance of having a concussion and possible brain trauma down to like 60%.
Oh, wow.
And although that's still high, like that was a significant margin. That could have been the difference of him being conscious when he fell or being totally knocked out entirely.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a huge difference. I mean, one way or another, I mean, it's definitely it's safer. You can't argue that, right?
Yeah, it's enhanced safety. Right. I mean, I can never say for lovely legal reasons that our helmets are safer or safer than anybody else's, but we definitely try to put as much into the helmet as we can. But kind of back to what's cool about Nikolai's crash is that it was a proof of our research. Like we had proven in the lab that it did its job the way we tested it, but we had never gone back and compared it to a real world crash. And so that was what was really cool. And I can't really say that a lot of people have done with the actual helmet that a rider rode and recreated in the lab.
Kind of so work backwards from it and like reverse engineer from the actual crash itself.
And that really solidified for us that we were onto something. I mean, we always had faith in that we were putting softer stuff next to the rider's head. This was just one of those nice, confident building moments where it's like, yeah, the numbers actually pan out, you know?
Yeah, it definitely has to feel good. I mean, that's one of those moments where you get a chance to pat yourself on the back. And I know anytime that that's happening in my life, it definitely feels like, hey man, I'm doing something right, you know?
Yeah. And that's the hard part with rotational impact or rotational impact forces and like the stuff that MIPS is going after. There's no standard there. We're all trying to create technology and features and things to enhance the safety of our helmet, but beyond the linear impact test that the government requires, it's kind of up in the air. And that's both a good and bad thing. It makes it good that we get to try new things. It's bad in that everybody can get really cynical really fast, or and it's hard to take seriously when it comes to protective gear. You know, with bikes, you can say, oh, every year they get 20% lighter and 20% more rigid and more compliant and all this other stuff.
20% more expensive.
Yeah, yeah. But with helmets, it's kind of like we're trying to make a better mousetrap, but there's no measure for it right now. What's really cool though is behind the scenes, Brad is talking to all these people. So in a sense, Callie is talking with Troy Lee. As far as like we share our knowledge in the sense of what we learned.
Well, yeah, I know when I talked to Brad, he said, I'll tell anybody how I do it because I just want to see everybody make a safe helmet. So he's like, I don't really care. You guys anybody wants to come over here and learn how to do what I'm doing? I'll show you. You know, like he's like, and those are the kind of things that Brad says that tells you, like, he's not bullshitting that he really just gives a shit about people's safety. You know what I mean? I really feel like it would I just, he's genuine. That's the best I can say. You know, he's just a very genuine guy. And I had said this in my video in Outer Bike, and I don't think that I don't know if everybody saw that video or not, but like one of the things that just shows that, like, to me, like those things, you know, when sometimes you do things and you're not necessarily doing them because you think somebody's watching, but somebody's watching that and they're like, oh wow, look at this guy, I really like that, you know. And that's the kind of thing that I'm about to explain with Brad, was that he wasn't doing this for attention. Some guy walks by and one of your helmets that's like 10 years old, and he like goes and grabs one of his brand new ones and walks up to the dude and he's like, hey, let me switch with you. You know, he's just like stoked to see that helmet that was like super old. It was like seeing one of his kids again, you know, and he was like, oh my God, I got to get this thing from this dude. And I want this dude to have our new helmet because it's so much better than our old one was, you know. And I just remember, I forget which marketing guy was standing next to him, and I had said something to him about it. He's like, that's Brad. He just does that stuff. You know?
It's something that's rubbed off on me, and I'll be honest, I've done that a couple times, and it is just the way Callie is. Like, I've seen people and who've had busted up helmets, and I've literally stopped them. They're not a part of the group I'm riding in Santa Cruz or wherever, and if it's bad enough or if it's whatever, you know, the timing's right, I'll walk over and be like, dude, let me help you out here. Like, your helmet is not cool. I'll give you this one if you just ride that and not ride the beat up one that you got. That is definitely Brad, and he is definitely about making a better product, not for money, but to make a better piece of safety gear. And the cool thing is that because he's the owner of Callie and the lead engineer, we don't have the corporate, like, conference room investors oversight that says you need to be making this or that. Like, Brad's making the helmets that he wants and believes in. And it's always the cooler projects, the top tier stuff that he's working on that are usually the coolest ones with the newest tech because they're most expensive, but it extends to everything we make with helmets. And it is, he will not, the fact that he will not sell a product that he would not put his own kids in is frankly the only thing that I really needed to hear when considering even my employment at Cali, let alone riding one of their helmets for years before, was knowing that this isn't just some guy putting out a design to make money. He wants to make some money, but he also thinks that he can actually make a better product, and he's doing it.
That's a hell of a culture to have, man. You know, I'm not lying to you, like where it makes me envious of the company that you work for just because of that. I mean, it's just to have that kind of culture that you're going to work at every day. It has to feel good. It has to feel good to go in and be able to feel like, you know, you're making a difference and you're doing it like holding your head high too. You know what I mean? You're making a difference and you're not just like, you know, working for the man, you know, and trying to like squeeze like pennies out of everything. And like, you're really doing something you're proud of.
Yeah. I mean, it's, after selling or marketing pumps and multi-tools and accessories and apparel, you know, you make up a lot of stuff to make your product seem better. You little things. With helmets, though, it's no bullshit. We have to do it right, or someone can die.
Right.
And there's a dark side to our industry too, in that we most of the time only encounter it from the perspective of, oh, I crashed and I need a new lid or whatever. You know, it makes sense when you start talking to people who've lost somebody because of a bad crash, and whether or not they had a helmet on or not, or it was a Cali or not. I mean, we're dealing with people here, and like I said, you could explain away any other piece of equipment that you're wearing except the helmet on a bike, as far as so yeah, you're right. I don't have to fake anything about what I'm selling. Or talking about. We have to make it work so that you guys can keep riding. You know, we have to do a job, and we do it. And because nothing leaves our shelves unless it's gonna be safe, and that's really cool.
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly believe you. I know. I mean, I've been down there. I've met Brad myself, you know, more than one instance, and I can't say well enough, you know, that what you're saying is the truth. I mean, obviously you have the product. I mean, you have Nikolai. What the hell is his last name again? Yeah, whatever he said. So you have him throwing himself off a fucking cliff in Rampage and walking away from it. And I'm sure, you know, hundreds and hundreds of other people out there around the world that have worn your helmet and gotten themselves into a situation and walked away from it. And I think that's, you know, that speaks for itself, you know. And with that, all that being said, you know, here we are, we're wrapping up into 2 hours, and I want to once again, you know, tell you my appreciation that you came out here and spent your Sunday evening with me. I'm sure you much rather been doing something else than hanging out with this dude drinking beer talking about helmets. But
I wish I was there to do it. I'm sorry that this week's plans didn't work out, man, because I actually was hoping to be up there in your garage, especially now that I'm seeing all the shit you got back there.
Right. There's a plethora of hangover back there, so you got to be watch out. You come here, you'll catch a hangover, man. That's what I was we can definitely do something though. I mean, now I didn't know that you had family right up here in my neck of the woods, so we'll definitely have to get together for sure. So outside of that, man, once again, dude, I appreciate you stopping by. For all you that are listening still, I think I may not be sure. I'm pretty sure there's a discount code on that old Cali interview that I did, and still live.
I think so.
Right on. And then also, if you're interested in to help and support the channel through Patreon, I have coupons on there for Cali and other companies as well. Some of them are 20, 25%. Some of them are less, but I mean, I'm trying to bring some value with the Patreon to you guys for that. So, not just the extra content, the longer cut videos or the early release or the sticker pack, like trying to bring it. In my eyes, I want that Patreon to be like, hey, I'm paying this much, but I'm saving this much. So if you guys want to help support the channel that way, that'd be awesome as well. If not, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, do whatever the fuck you're doing, dude. Just keep watching the channel. I don't give a shit. It sounds good to me, man. I appreciate all of you. Once again, thank you, Patrick, and all you guys out there. Just remember, it only takes a bike to be a biker. Get the fuck out and be one, bitches.